when we talk about what businesses do, it's not just recycling. It's actually doing everything they can to reduce waste. So that ordering toilet paper with no cords, ordering vacuum cleaners that last that are much more durable. These vacuum cleaners were half the price, but they only lasted a quarter as long in terms of the useful life than a very high quality vacuum cleaner. So we're looking at all kinds of practices, even generate less waste. This is what's going on in businesses around the world. Next. And then, as part of management, what businesses are implementing, it's kind of akin to total quality management, but it's really total environmental quality management approach. So, and we can go over this, but there's a lot of examples internationally of what companies can do. Next. And it's not just putting these programs in, it's also trying to make things more recyclable. So this is what we call high visibility or fluorescent paper or Fiesta paper. And these are not as recyclable as the earth tones. So this is an example of switching this out to more muted tones to make paper more recyclable. This is actually at Kaiser. We have a nonprofit that works with UCLA. We've gone to about a dozen Kaiser hospitals. I think there's a couple people in the audience here, students, have actually gone on these, but going to every single operating department within a hospital, surgery, outpatient, pharmacy, OBGYN, and actually developing a waste reduction and recycling program for each hospital department and each hospital. So this is what's actually being done at businesses. Next. And this is just an example, even trying to reduce regulated waste. Here you see a picture of a recyclable actually being thrown away with regulated waste. So you're paying 70 cents a pound to treat something that's totally recyclable. So that's just just a mistake in that program. Next. Okay. We're going to take a look at what's going on around the world. And you can try to see what can apply here. But I want to tell you a little bit about how other countries, other cities have approached the management of solid waste. Next. Okay, what we're looking at here is this is the MRF as it is today here in Oxnard. So we're going to look to see what does it take or what do you want in the future for the city of Oxnard. We basically know that this is a very basic manually operated facility. The facilities internationally are very, very automated because you get worker safety improvements and increased recovery. And we know that the material recovery facility, these MRFs now, the state is actually looking at performance standards. And we discussed about the prohibition on organic waste. At the home, at the business, there's no way you're going to be able to take every piece of paper, every piece of food out of the waste stream. So this, like I said, this MRF basically becomes what we call the last filter to basically screen out the organics that are being supposed to be banned from landfill disposal. And most of all, in other countries, like I said, they're going for zero waste, but it's all based on addressing the climate change issues. Next. So I'm going to fly through a huge number of slides showing you what was important in other countries, how other countries approach managing the waste streams through the city. And this is a facility in Madrid, Spain, and this is their community outreach education center. Here we have an ed center that's just one room. They have an entire building and complex for education and interface with the public. Next. They use art. It's not just all engineering. They use art, music, photography, many different medias of communication. And actually here is Leslie from the Navy posing. The sculpture going to make the crash. So this was actually the federal tour that I led on evaluate international best management practices. Next. Within this complex, they have a very high-tech three-dimensional facility map of the facility that describes the different operations, the landfill, the anaerobic digestion, waste to energy. Next. Environmental communication is an entirely new field, and along with that, an entirely new field called environmental psychology. How do we get people to care about the environment? How do we get them to actually participate in reducing waste? And so it's not that you tell them that there's 1,000 tons or 200,000 tons. Nobody relates to that. And that's why we set aside that one pile of 1.13 tons for an individual. So this is how in Madrid, so the top picture is 2 people in an apartment that's trashed for a week, a month, and a year. So everything is done on an individual level for you to understand that what your individual contribution is. That pile that you saw outside is, you go to a restaurant, so they have to prepare, and there's waste there, and you require government services. So it's part of the waste from the government that's actually caused by you as the resident. Next. Of course, really the big picture is, this is how much trash Madrid produces, I guess in a year, but that's the real Madrid stadium. So here we would use the Coliseum or the Rose Bowl. They try to localize everything and personalize everything. Next. Education, this is so fundamental. This is 4 years old, 5 years old in Madrid. This is their recycling education center. And you see the boxes, the color-coded boxes? And in the one on the extreme right is the little pieces of recyclables and trash in a little plastic container. And they learn to color code the recycling program. So the paper is a certain color and plastic bottle is another color. So they learn this at 4 years old. Next. By 9 years old, they have already learned environmental preferred shopping. So by 9 years old, that's my hand. They're given a shopping list. And you go to a pretend supermarket and you have a shopping list, and they go, buy lettuce. So you can pick between the different choices, and you learn, you get more points for something without the packaging. So this is done by 9 years old. Next. And what do plants look like in Europe? This plant is over 25 years old. We don't have anything like this in the US. As much automation as possible for increased recovery, improved worker safety. Next. And that plant is hopefully what this MRF will become. It separates the trash into a wet stream and a dry stream. So whatever organics or like paper and food and leaves, because it cannot be put in the landfill, they actually anaerobically digest it in a tank and produce methane, kind of like gas from the stove, and it's stored here. Very common technology. This has been around for 25, 30 years. Next. This is the control room where the non-recyclable stuff and the dry fraction, which is the non-recyclable plastics, non-recyclable paper, actually go and it gets converted to energy and actually the electricity provided to homes in the city of Madrid. And if you look at this computer panel next, this is a close-up. This is the real-time emissions of what's coming out the stacks. So they want people to know that it's absolutely safe. And anybody with a computer can go online and actually see this exact same. So facilities are operated with full transparency to the public, because it is key to have successful projects, successful facilities, have the trust of the community. Next. This is the emission controls for a typical facility. And it's about half the capital cost of the plant. So it's very, very extensive. Next. In Madrid, in the newer developments, they don't do too many single-family homes anymore, but they call these condos, they call them flats, we call them condos. They didn't even want trucks driving around on the streets to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and to reduce traffic. So the way trash is picked up is the residents come down and they drop them into these chutes. Next. And it drops down, and this is conveyed pneumatically, like at a bank where you put something in a tube and it gets sucked. It actually goes through, there you are, Leslie. So this actually then goes next to underground tubes in the city and goes to a transfer station, which is operated by 2 people. Okay, next. Where the recyclables go to a recycling facility, and where the trash actually goes to that materials recovery facility, and then gets gets separated and converted to energy. Next. Here's a picture in Germany. Again, this is a very small, very small town, but they have their own fully integrated MRF. Separate the trash into the wet stream and the dry stream. Next. And the wet stream gets anaerobically digested to produce methane, which is natural gas, and converted to energy. Next. And the dry fraction is actually put into shipping containers. Next. And the shipping containers are actually sent to an industrial park where it is unloaded in this facility. Next. And this is actually fed into an incinerator, which is part of the utility, and then fed they don't make electricity, they actually make process steam for the manufacturing facilities. And then in the off hours, when the facility is not manufacturing, then the steam is actually used to generate electricity. Next. This is just a picture of the remote camera watching the trash being converted to energy. Next. And in the wet fraction, the food and the yard waste and paper, they actually are put into what we call sealed tunnels or garages, and then converted to biogas, basically methane. So there's two methods. There's either we'll call it wet fermentation, and this is called dry fermentation. So there's many types of technologies. Next. And this is just the outside of that dry fermentation facility. You can see all the stainless steel tubing that transports the methane that's generated. Next. This is in the European Union. This is the newest integrated MRF. It just became operational in the year 2011. And this is located in Marseille, France. You have to understand, in Europe, they're very much like us here. They build regional facilities. That means facilities that serve multiple cities. And this is their newest facility, and they call this an integrated MRF. Next. And this is, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but just generally, the wastes come in from 16, 17 different cities by truck and train. And the yellow is what we call the dry fraction. The red is kind of the wet fraction. So the wet fraction is basically anaerobically digested to produce gas for energy, and the remainder, which cannot be digested, is actually composted to make compost for the farmers. And the dry materials, after the recyclables are put out, is actually converted to energy. Next. These are built as very nice industrial facilities. So this is actually the facility. You can see the treated water actually being part of the architecture here. Next. This is their community education center, and they have a three-dimensional model, and they're trying to describe the trains that come in and how it's automatically unloaded. So these are very professionally designed, dedicated education centers for the public and for schools. Next. And these facilities are built with walkways to all the different process buildings. And you can see any part of the plant, it is open to the community. On request, you can just go. Next. And this is just to show you that the trains come in from 16, 17 different cities. Next. And this is the plant. You don't see very many people. It is because it is as automated as possible. There are people working, but they are actually within an enclosed, separately air-conditioned building, and they primarily play the role of quality control. So most of the jobs here are very high-end jobs. Next. And you can see sustainable design, use of natural lighting. Next. And so that facility, like I said, separates the wet and the dry. So the wet goes through a tube for initial fermentation or decomposition. Next. And it gets anaerobically digested in the vertical tank, and the gas that's produced gets stored in this container. This round building actually has like a rubber bladder in it, and it stores the gas. Next. And that gas is actually fed into an engine. This is very common practice. This has been around 20 years. And this makes energy, produces energy for the community. Next. when the stuff that cannot be digested in the anaerobic digester actually gets composted. But it's not composted outside, it's actually done in a building. It is because these things are built to very, very high environmental standards. No dust, no odors outside. That's one of the requirements. And if you can see on top, at the very top, there are actually vents. So this is, we call this a negative air pressurized building. So if you stand at the entrance of the door, you will feel the air rushing in because there is a vacuum in the building. So dust and odor does not go out. Next. This is called a biofilter. So the air from every building is sucked into a vacuum system and then routed to underneath this living biofilter. We call this a biofilter because it is a living filter composed of specialized organics, which is kind of finished compost, but the bacteria actually absorbs the odor and the dust. And then there's a number of series of banks of them. This is one of the largest biofilter systems in the world. This is in Marseille, France. Next. Just to show you the biofilter, that's all the tubing that carries the negative vented air into this filter. Next. And the dry fraction consists of all the stuff that you cannot recycle, non-recyclable plastics, non-recyclable paper, that actually converted to energy. This is a stoker-grade incinerator. Next. And this is the electric generation units. Next. And in France, they actually try to recover additional metals from the ash. Okay. Next. One of the things that hopefully this city will consider, and this is in Brussels, Belgium, as they have a energy conversion facility. But this isn't just built as a plant for the use of the local community. What they have done here next is this is built as a school. So on the day after that we were there, over 100 people from the European Union was going to come here to learn about how to operate these plants and how to design these plants. So it's actually built also as a job training center because this industry is growing so fast that they need people to learn, and they don't teach this in schools, so they actually use real industrial, full-size commercial facilities as a school. Next. And as part of our the requirement for me to evaluate facilities, we basically had the free run of the entire facility. You could go anywhere and photograph anything. Next. And although a lot of the technology is basically big boxes, they had videos and poster board that shows what goes on inside every piece of equipment as part of the tour for the community and also for the schools. Next. And this is their very traditional waste-to-energy facility. Next. This is the ash loadout. You can see they're really into cowboys. So, okay, next. And of course, a very extensive interface with the local community as the facilities in Spain. So this is the community reading room, which the community can request to use at any time. Next. Okay, now we're going to go to Japan. Japan is very, very different. Not just culturally, but they approach trash very differently. And so just to give you some context, Japan is socially very homogeneous, and you have to understand that they believe that it is, as a community, the trash should never leave our community. It is our cultural and social responsibility that we manage that material, that we recycle as much as possible, and as a community, we should benefit from utilizing that trash, as we call it, but they look at that as a resource, to utilize that resource for the benefit of the community. So these we call community-based facilities. They are designed to be built as part of the local community, and they integrate the community in these facilities. What does that mean? Well, when I taking people from many different countries around the world on these tours, including the federal engineers I care, next, it wasn't the technology that was so interesting to them. It was, look, this is the facility. Next door is the school, apartment buildings, stores, right next door, the heart of the community. how is that acceptable? It is because it is built to the higher standards. Next, and because the community swimming pool utilizes the waste heat, sits on top of the building. This is the community center, and it is part of the waste treatment facility. This is the community swimming pool. Next, this is the community hot tub. Next, this is the community tea room. Well, we do a big coffee shop here, right? This is the tea room. This is all at the waste treatment facility. This is what we call integration with the community. Next, this is the community thrift store. Okay? And a big part of Japanese culture is to create jobs. It's part of economic development for the local community. Next, you create cottage industries. So not so much pulling trash stuff out of the trash, but actually working with industry, getting industrial scraps and making customized bags like the ones you got here. Okay, so they create a lot of cottage industries. You can do this here. It's just how creative you are. Yes?
Just to comment on that, Eugene, we're already talking about doing this here, adjusting our permit to do a reuse center because there's so many valuable items coming out that are just, that some of them even have the price tags on them still.
Yes. Okay, next. This is, and as part of that same facility, you had a refurbishing, basically a carpentry shop. And next, and which took broken furniture and refurbished it. And they would hold silent auctions, weekly or monthly, depending on what they get. And this is all sold for a profit. And you learn skills, and this is all fed back into the local, and this is the local community who runs this. Next. In Japan.
Sorry to interrupt, can you run a little louder? Okay, have this turned all the way up.
Okay, sorry, I'll talk a little louder. So in Japan, they have many separations at the home. And you're not going to get that here, but this is, I call this the tempura process, because they collect very, very clean food from restaurants and homes. And they actually deep fry that food, collect source separated food, and they actually make animal feed. Next, this is how clean it is. It's basically vegetable waste, trim and culls. Next, I'm standing in that building with the tempura process, and right next door is another facility that makes biogas out of food waste that's too dirty to be made into animal feed. And down the street is a disassembly center for washers and dryers, for air conditioners, a C&D recycling center, a paper recycling plant, a waste-to-energy plant. So they call these eco-parks. Okay? They don't want the trash from the facility leaving the community. So out of 100 tons of trash that may come into a facility like this, or a park like this, maybe only about 5% ever leave it for landfill. And that 5% does not, is so inert that it basically does not create greenhouse gases. Next. This is the tipping floor where the trash is dumped. It's dumped into sealed bunkers, so you don't see loose trash on the floor. Next. Again, this is the biogas from the food waste that's too dirty to be made into animal food. Next. In Japan, long term, they have extended producer responsibility. That means if you manufacture a product, you are kind of responsible for the end life, which means they design, you manufacture an air conditioner, it's designed to be recycled. So this is a air conditioner recycling facility. Actually, the people who designed this is actually sitting right here in front. Next, this is the washing machine dryer recycling center. So this is where, at the end of life, this gets disassembled and recycled. Next, this is their education center. Next, a close-up to show that this is a monitor, all the pieces are designed to snap off and be recycled. Okay. We're a little bit, not quite there yet in this country, but it is, we do have extended producer responsibility legislation on the books and a lot being proposed. But this is all for the longer-term goal of environmental sustainability. Next, this is a PET recycling facility, and these are bales of your drinking water and soda bottles. Next, this is actually one of the cleanest plants that I've ever seen and produces probably the highest quality PET recycled plastic. Next, but this is where the labels even come off the PET bottles, and it's separate as they clean the PET. Next. And this is the finished recycled PET flakes. That's going to be raw materials for new products. Next. This is a JFE engineering facility in Kasuga, Japan. And I wanted to show you what is considered some of what we call best management practices. So here, next, this is a landfill. There's nothing that goes in this landfill that basically can create greenhouse gas. It's just inert materials. Next. We see some solid waste there. This is only because after they had their disaster, they're actually storing the materials there to be processed because this plant actually had to be repaired for a while. So even in emergencies, they still stockpile these materials for recycling and for treatment. Next. So if you wanted to know what actually happens to all the trash, how do they meet the goal of nothing going to landfill that creates greenhouse gas? Well, but after they gasify the trash, and whatever is remaining, the ash is actually melted. Okay, this is like lava, basically. You can imagine that. And I have, courtesy of JP, samples here on the table on the right. You can take a look at it. So what you see there is a combination of a metallic slag and a glassy slag that's actually used as road base. Next. So metal is recycled, and the road base is actually made into construction products. So that's just why they can actually achieve those goals of nothing organic going to landfill. Next. And talk about working with hospitals and medical waste. This is how they do it in Japan. As you know, as part of the facility, we don't think about it, but waste from hospitals and even trash in general, it has a huge biological component, diapers and things like that. And I'm not just talking baby diapers, I'm talking adult diapers too. But in Japan, that's why for health reasons you want to use thermal treatment. But for the regulated medical waste, and this is part of the solid waste management facility, when it's a systems approach or integrated approach. This is how they manage the waste from hospitals. Next. Comes in boxes that are coated and gets routed. Next. And it's stored in a 10-tier inventory system, and then it's individually fed into the gasifier and then melted. Next, whereas in California, I took this picture at a local landfill. So every piece of red that you see is a regulated red bag, and every piece of blue that you see is your what they call the sterile blue wrap from a hospital. In California, it may be regulated medical waste, but once it goes and gets sterilized, and I'm talking steam clean, basically high pressure steam and high temperature steam, it is technically and legally defined as non-hazardous waste, and it goes on landfill. And this is what happens. And this is actually pretty crude on an international level. Next. This is one of the benchmark JFE facilities in Japan. So you have, like I said, for this facility, the community center is actually built next door. It's not built on top of the center. To show you that these are integral parts of the community. What really struck me about this facility next is that it was so clean that when we walked in, they made us take our shoes off and gave us slippers because our shoes were too dirty to walk around in their trash pile. And this is actually cleaner than the hospitals that I've seen here. Next. I love this place because they had a history of trash cans throughout Japan. And my wife is just waiting for me to retire because I have so many different kinds of trash cans and trash from all over the world. I think she wants to burn the garage down. Next. This is their tipping floor. Do you see trash on the tipping floor? No. It's actually double sealed, and the trash is actually put into a sealed pit. This is attention to detail. This is what we call benchmark model internationally. Next. Control room, very modern. Next. Plants are spotless. I think they even dust the rafters. Next. This is their turbine generator room. Next. And this isn't a one-off. This is common throughout Asia. This is in Taiwan. This is their waste-to-energy plant. This is their integrated garden. Guess what? It doesn't look like it. This building was actually built by Ian Pay's architectural firm. So these are built as pieces of art. So when you think of what you want for this facility, what you want for your facility, you think about what other people have done. Next. This is their tipping floor. So you don't have gates that open sideways. You have gates that open vertically here. Okay, next. And these facilities are they all incorporate working with the community. So this is a walkway, and you can see it's actually somebody epoxied their garage door. It is so clean, it's spotless. You walk and you get to see all the different equipment and learn about the process. Next. This is their turbine, but you can see it's actually very noisy. So they actually built soundproof and air-conditioned walkways so you can see all the equipment. Next. And again, like I said, it's not just all engineering, but they teach you the entire sustainability, environmental education, how to reduce waste. They use art, photography, music, videos, all the different mediums. This is a new field of environmental communication. Next. Like I said, even in Taiwan, this is community swimming pool, community weight room. Next. This is to give you the understanding. This is the cultural differences. This is Japan. This is a typical separation. That's 12 separations. Okay? Next. Oh, my wife would be so pissed if she found out I used this. I told her to go stand up for scale. But if you look, they even recycle their milk cartons. But if you look at the instructions, they tell you to drain it, clean it, take it apart, and fold it. Everybody does this. Are you willing to do this here? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. I'm just showing you how far people will go for a sustainable environment when you understand the impact of what trash does. Next. This is a coffee shop. So they have combustible trash and non-combustible trash. And if you don't finish your coffee, you don't throw it away. Next. You empty it. Okay? And then they take this away every 15, 20 minutes. Okay? This is attention to detail. If they do this, their plants are much more simpler than ours. If we're not willing to do this, this plant has to put the effort to put the technology in to do this for you. So as a community, you have to decide where you want to go. I'm just showing you what the best practices are in the world today. So in Japan, in this city, they went from, to increase the amount of source separated recycling, they went from 7 types to 15 types. In this country, we go the exact opposite. We make smaller and more, they do more separations. Next. Remember what I said about community-based facilities. These facilities can be designed that they are built right next to hospitals and schools. It's basically run like an office building. Okay? So, what do you want for your community? Next. And a lot of people, and I hear this a lot, and that's a total BS, but I always hear that if you build these facilities and make it so simple that you will destroy recycling. That is furthest thing from the truth. If you look at the European Union, and different countries have different timelines because of the level of the industrialization. But if you look at the countries with the highest amount of recycling, they also have the highest amount of waste to energy. That's how you implement your policies and programs. And that's what we're going to be looking at in terms of the long-range solid waste management plan and the zero waste plan. Is we want to make sure that if you build an integrated facility, you will maximize the amount of recycling participation at the community and business level. Next. A big part of what we're talking about, you think, is, okay, we have to recycle, but the city has larger responsibilities in terms of what it has to do in terms of planning the solid waste. And part of that is disaster planning. In any disaster, the single largest cost is in the management of debris. So as we upgrade this facility and plan for the future, we still have to understand and plan for natural disasters, or now, unfortunately, man-made disasters. So I just want to show you a few pictures of disasters I've been involved with or had the privilege to visit. Next. This is New York City. So course, this is considered a crime scene. It's a terrorist act. So the way we manage the debris here is very different. This is glass, steel, and concrete next. This is the excavating out the foundation of the Twin Towers. Next, this is Katrina. After a couple weeks afterwards, that's a barge that got shoved right through the levee, half a mile inland. And that's how powerful nature is. Okay, next. So we're dealing with total devastation of the city. Okay, next. And these are houses that basically got floated down the highway by the water that rushed through the levee. Okay, next. And as I was trying to figure out how to get all this stuff recycled and managed, and I couldn't do anything here because that means there's still human remains that still have to be removed. So every disaster has its challenges, and cities have to plan for this as part of their solid waste management effort. Next. And this is back to the Twin Towers in New York, is that because it was a crime scene, every piece of rubble in that location had to be basically burned. Next. And we're talking, so you can see the people, they're basically looking for little pieces of like fingernails and evidence and things like that. Next. And then this is what actually could be disposed with in landfill. And we try to recover as much recyclables as possible. Next. And JFE was kind of close because I wanted to see how they managed the disaster in Japan. And understand that just in this one prefecture, 19,000 lives were lost. Next. And this was a school that got wiped out by the tsunami that came inland. It wasn't so much the earthquake, it was the water that came in that killed the kids. This is the memorial that where we went to pay our respects. Next. You talk about an entire city being devastated. This is the debris of the houses and buildings from the city stacked up over a huge area. 24/7 next, processing this material next through makeshift MRFs next to look for personal effects, human remains, and everything else next. And what was unique for this facility to me was because this was an agricultural community, they were actually recovering the soil that was washed away and actually cleaning the soil and putting it back to agricultural use for the community. Next. And this company here, JFE, they were actually asked to deal with all the organic materials. They actually, from the day of the evidence, when they say go, which is doing a little bit right after the disaster, within 6 months they already had built 2 facilities to incinerate the trash, to take care of the biological issues. Next. So the challenge you face now really is kind of a Rubik's Cube. What are the best pieces to put together? What kind of MRF do you want this to end up? How do we want to convert to energy, the wet waste and the dry waste? And how do we use the preferred hierarchy of managing waste? Next. And so what we're really talking about is the stuff that's going to landfill. You can recover more recyclables, you can create energy from the wet stream, you can create energy from the dry stream, you can compost, you can create all kinds of little industries. We're going to go from here to there to meet not only the statutory regulatory goals, but also to empower the community for local economic development. Next. This is the overview of this facility. So the city now has a huge job of planning. Joyce, next. Of what to do with the property and how to expand this. Next. This is just a mock-up. Next. But we have to decide how to upgrade and how to expand, and to what kind of facility do you want, and how do you want to integrate the community into this. What kind of educational interface do you want to have in this? Next. So thank you for that. And that is a very quick overview about the last 10 years of the best practices from around the world. Okay? Any questions? Okay. We do want to accomplish something today, and I know we're flying through this. And if you want the sessions to be longer next time, let us know. If you want more one-on-one discussions, let us know. But I need to discuss what we want to try to accomplish today, and we do want your input. Next. Okay, next. Okay. In order for us to put together a plan, we have to have a vision, we have to have goals, and we have to have guiding principles. This is kind of the framework of how we put together plans. There are many ways to do this, but I think this will work well for this community. And so I want to define these terms for you so you can understand what we're trying to achieve here. Next. Okay? So when I say vision, I'm talking about creating an inspirational big picture regarding the future of what you want the infrastructure of Oxnard to be. And I'm not talking just the solid waste recycling infrastructure. We're also talking about the environmental sustainability infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it's not just hardware, not equipment, it's not trucks. That's hard infrastructure. We're also talking about soft infrastructure, the environmental communications, the education, the community centers. So we're looking at both a vision for the hard and soft infrastructure for the city. Goals are quantifiable and observable programs and policies that can be implemented to achieve that vision. So, okay, curbside recycling program, the food waste separation program, the business technical system. Those are programs that we say we're going to ban the disposal of food waste from landfill. That's a policy. Okay, so there's many different things, and what we will be doing is we will be compiling a list of all the different programs and policies for you to consider at the next meeting. But please understand that we have to create a vision, we have to determine goals, and most importantly, next. But today I want to get guiding principles from you. Outside there's a sheet called Examples of Guiding Principles. What we have done is we have compiled the most common guiding principles found in zero waste plans and solid waste management plans. And what guiding principles are is no matter what the goal is, no matter what the vision is, these guiding principles are the fundamental core values that represent who you are and what you believe. Okay? And what they do is they give us a direction, a path, okay, to achieve our goals. You tell us how you want to get there. Okay? So I'll give you an extreme example. So let's say a city there's only a residential community and no land. So that's okay. We're going to contract somebody else in another city to handle all our waste. Well, that's okay. But you have a facility and you do have land. And I think you have the desire to be the leader. So maybe your core values are going to be very different. But it is very important for us to understand that as the city putting together this plan, that whatever plan we put together and the goals we select and the vision that is created reflects your core values. So this, in a way, they define who you are, what you believe, and what you want to be going forward. Okay. So that is what we're going to work on today. Next. Okay, so what we're going to do, like I said, I've compiled a list of guiding principles for you to discuss, and we're going to break into smaller groups for you to discuss. After that, we will send that to you via email or by snail mail. And for the next meeting, we're going to develop your vision. That's what we want to be able to do. And then we are going to look at the list of options, programs and policies, goals to achieve that vision. So this is a multiple-step process, and we want to have your input. Because no matter what happens, this is your community. I've done this for countries, big cities, little cities, and really the most important input is going to be hopefully from you guys. Next. Okay, so flip up the lights. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up we're going to ask everybody just to go outside in the lobby. We're going to set up 3 tables, and then we're going to break you up into 3 groups to start discussion of the guiding principles. What we want you to do is to look at the list, and you are absolutely free to add any additional guiding principles that you want, but to have each group rank the guiding principles in order of importance. And then you will select a representative to, after 30 minutes to come back and report to the general group. And then we will consolidate everything, get that out to you, and get you prepared for the next meeting. I have my students who volunteered from UCLA to serve as scribes and to help moderate the facility. And there are many of us, hopefully we will walk around and you are free to ask us questions to help you move the discussion along. So if we can, please go out the lobby while we get this thing rearranged, we will get this sorted.
First, the tough choice. How about like family buy-in? So we can start with if you can list your top 5 and any comments you have, or anybody else want to shout out with something that they think is important?
My number 1 is protect the public and environmental health. That was because there's a lot of already contaminated stuff going on.
One point in time, now a year later, and now a year later. Let's see how we're improving and make it relevant for young people, right? Not just 4-year-olds.
I think that comes down to number 2, which is education as well. So that's education is a guiding principle once you get to the next level.
Is environmental justice. And that's something that, as someone number from the city, I really, really want us to address. I think it's a real shame that a lot of times you see the power plants, the landfills, and all of these things put into the poor communities, people that don't speak the language as well. And I think it's wrong, and I think it's something that, as a city person, I would really like to address more and more.
Okay. My first one that it's more pleasant that you can have your community swimming pool and your coffee shop right next door because the technologies are there that it's not in the right community. I think that's pretty much.
I thought a lot of them were very important, but kind of 5 that I stuck with was protect public and environmental health. I think it's really important to have education to decrease consumption and waste generation. I think it's kind of like the primary thing that starts at the bottom and brings to the top. Oddly enough, I don't think it's a huge choice, but convenience. I think it's really important that it's convenient for people to do these kind of things. Promote safe technology and infrastructure, and then promote strategic and public-private partnerships that cross-connection of all agencies working together.
Process streams and embracing some of the techniques.
And outreach and marketing efforts.
Fortunately, we have embraced that here in the United States.
Create meaningful jobs, careers, and promote local economic development.
But there's more to this than just the land.
Is there anybody who did it?
Consumer responsibility, and city leadership is a model for zero waste practices.
In addition to everything else, my focus has always been education. So I marked all the opportunities for education starting at the consumer level.
The 2 that I heard most frequently were the first one, protect public and environmental health, and create meaningful jobs and careers. I think those were the 2 that came up pretty consistently. In terms of ranking those as 1 and 2, should we take a vote on which one should be number 1? So I'll start with public health and environmental health. Is that number 1? Okay, over career. Anybody thinks career should be number 1? Okay, so so we'll rank. Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you. Oh, that's okay. So number 1 from this team is protect public and environmental health, and then number 2 is create meaningful jobs and careers. So those were, from what I heard, by far the leading contenders. The other ones that came up pretty frequently were promote new safe technology and infrastructure. I think I heard that 4 times. Expand education, outreach, and marketing efforts. I heard that a few times. And city leadership as a model for zero waste practices leadership by example. Does that sound pretty consistent with what everybody heard, or is there, I guess with education, I want to get your thoughts. I think there are a couple of points that mentioned education. There was increased recycling, I guess more at the consumer level, expand education, outreach, and marketing efforts. That's more from the government instead of reaching out. There was also producer responsibility. Any thoughts on what the focus of education should be?
I see a lot of kids in sports, they skateboard. Like I seen one of the slides they had color coded for the kids or where at a young age they can see they what I think he said mob they were ready to showing lettuce, lettuce and package. As for us, like if you look in the room, everybody's an adult already old and they're more focused on they're more aware of it, and people who are younger they're just aware of it. Like you said, they don't care if they go to the trash can or probably go on the floor or into something else. But if you get them when they're young and you keep them in, just like writing is right. That's like go to school, you learn to write. You mentioned learning.
I think there's also a need to educate businesses, and for example, I know in causes our office in Oxnard, our building doesn't participate in this commercial recycling, which grates me every time. And I think adding new things like food waste recycling, if that's coming down the pipeline, is that's going to require a lot of education of local businesses to get folks to participate.
Me myself, I was working for the facility here. And as I mentioned, there was 3 different types of recyclables. And restaurants, they were ranked at the cost of the top. That's dirty. And they had stores like Walmart.
Better working environment and careers, meaningful careers. Number 3, which is really important, which I think will serve EJ and SJ well, is the promotion of new technologies, conversion technologies. Consumer responsibility, where we're gonna also change our consumer consumption culture and start buying more and looking for the label that says recycled content and vote with our dollars and vote with our wallet.
If we get more convenient for people to recycle, we wouldn't be willing to do it. As opposed to having to come a long ways to, I live in Ventura, to come over here is kind of well, it's not that far, but it'd be easier if there was other locations. And if there's more incentives to recycle, that also help.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap up. Yep, we got our numbers.
Hi, my name is Todd Vasquez-Housley. I am the Environmental Resources Division MRF Manager for the City of Oxnard. Today we just completed our first Zero Waste Action Plan workshop, and we're just adjourning. Today we had MRF tours and some educational instruction by Dr. Eugene Tseng, the city's consultant in this process. And people after the MRF tour were put into workshops to discuss what they believe is important for including into the Zero Waste Action Plan that will go to council estimated in May. This document is important to the city in helping us develop how we're going to do education and outreach and increase our recyclables and diversion and reduce the amount of waste that we send to the landfill. Also discusses new opportunities for diversion and recycling that the city will be taking advantage of. So that's basically what happened here today, and I hope that you learn more about the MRF facility here, and have those of you who have interest in it, please contact us so that we can make sure that you get a tour or answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.